Hello and welcome everyone. This is the mock exam guidance for you guys for your organization studies examination. And I am going to cover once again like what is going to be the format as well as what constitutes of a good essay. And there will be an example. And then I will be adding some sample questions along with guidance for you guys in the Google Classroom. So do visit that. So coming to the structure of the exam, it is once again going to be a 2-hour exam with 6 questions, and you will have to answer 3 of them, and there will be no extra marks in case if you're answering more than 3 questions. So just make sure you divide your time accordingly. You focus on the fact that you need to answer 3 questions, and for each question you have approximately 40 minutes to address. So be very sure about the fact that which questions you are going to address, which questions you are going to answer. So this should be the first thing you do once you get the paper. Just read through the paper and highlight quickly for yourself that okay, where do you believe you have your strengths and what questions you should be answering. And I will highly recommend that answer those questions first in which you are well versed, but be sure that you do not take more than 40 minutes, because if you continue to write for longer period of time, you will actually start losing marks you can get per minute. So you may compromise on the fact that your last answer or third answer get compromised because you spent a lot of time on the first 2 questions. So be very sure about dividing your time. All right, once again, it's very important to understand that how are we going to define what is a good exam question or what is a good exam answer, sorry. So as I mentioned that primarily the form of answers is expected to be in the form of essays. So you need to understand what constitutes of a good essay. So first of all, as was the case with the other subject as well, a question will have more than one parts, but it does not mean that it is going to have two parts. It probably will be one part, but it will ask you to discuss it in two different point of views. Like I'm going to share an example with you in the next part as well. But it is important to first of all understand that how a question will be divided. So you need to understand that you are going to address both of the parts in order to get the marks. Secondly, um, it is also important that you highlight key concepts clearly in your answers with respect to whatever is being asked. Like for example, I gave you this assignment question in which you were supposed to write down that whether you will be willing to work for a post-bureaucratic organization or not. So first of all, it was expected that you are going to write about the post-bureaucratic organizations. You are going to define what kind of organizations exist or what kind of organizational structure exists there because of which it makes it different. And why would you like to work in such an organization? So primarily the question was very straightforward with one single expectation from you, but the expectation had to be fulfilled using 2 to 3 different parts which were actually not obviously stated in the question. So you need to keep that in mind that the questions are actually going to be of that particular nature, and if they are asking you for your opinion, you are not simply going to state your opinion, you are going to back your opinion with theories. So in order to back your opinion with theories, first of all, you need to discuss the theory on its own. You also need to understand your the structure of your essay needs to be logical. It should be following a proper guideline, like with respect to the fact that it should make sense. Like for example, in a question where I ask you, let's say, okay, how post-bureaucratic like would you like to work at a post-bureaucratic organization, if simply is the question, or do you, if I ask you for contemporary relevance of post-bureaucratic organizations or bureaucratic organizations, it is important for you to understand that you are going to discuss the concept first, and then you are going to make relevance to the fact that whatever the question was. Like for example, if it is asking you for contemporary relevance, you're not going to give contemporary relevance first and not talk about the uh, case at all, or you are not going to talk about the theory at all. So it is important that first you talk about the theory and then you build it to make a contemporary relevance of it to the in the preceding parts. And definitely there should be an introduction, there should be a main body, and there should be a conclusion. Like if it is about your opinion, so you are going to conclude your opinion with respect to either taking the right side or the left side, depending upon whatever you are agreeing upon. All right, so be very careful about that. Okay, so here's a sample question. The question states that do the principles of scientific management have any contemporary relevance? If you look at the question is actually divided into two parts. It is asking you for the principles of scientific management, and it is asking you for its contemporary relevance. So you cannot simply talk about its contemporary relevance without making reference to the principles of scientific management. So in this essay, what you are going to do is that first of all, you need to demonstrate an understanding of the principles of scientific management as set out by Frederick Taylor in the 20th century. So what you are going to do is, like, if you guys remember, we have talked about the four principles. We are going to talk about the four principles here, and we are going to develop on what his main principle scientific management theory was and what was it based upon. And once we have talked about that, then we are going to start talking about its contemporary relevance. We are going to give an introduction, first of all, in which we are going to make reference to the fact that scientific management was one of the earliest work. It refers to the systemization. It refers to the systemization of management, and we are going to talk make a point that it was primarily based upon considering humans in like, for example, focusing upon the tasks, finding out the best ways to do it, and then making people do that task. Then you are going to talk about the the principles of scientific management. You are going to draw your relevance upon the fact that how those principles of scientific management can be used today. So once you have discussed the introduction and the principles, you are going to start talking about contemporary relevance. For contemporary relevance, you have to provide the contrasting views, like whether you believe it is relevant today or whether you believe it is not relevant today. So when you are talking about its contemporary relevance, you have to see in what circumstances is it relevant, and you definitely have to provide examples. Without examples, the answer is not complete. So, like, for example, here you can make example of McDonaldization and McJobs. For example, we had discussed a case study on it as well. We have also discussed how McDonaldization actually is systemization and how it relates back to the scientific management principles. And when you will be going through the books, you will be able to understand more of the McDonaldization concept through the case studies and the text in book 2. And you can definitely draw the contemporary relevance there, that scientific management is even working in the 21st century. But then again, you also need to draw relevance to the fact that why scientific management is not working today. So here you probably have to give some examples of how the structure has changed, or how the element of humanization is becoming relevant, is becoming more important. And you can draw reference to, for example, Morningstar case study, which we covered previously, where you had seen the video, you have seen their website, you have read the article. So you can make relevance to the fact that how primarily Morningstar exhibited that it's not about scientifically managing people. It is people can self-manage themselves as well. So um, that is how you are going to discuss the question. And yes, you are going to form the conclusion as well, where you can highlight that whether you are more towards the side that it have more contemporary relevance today, or you are more towards the fact that its contemporary relevance is pretty much concentrated to specific kind of jobs. Lastly, guys, for your benefit, I added the added more guideline for you guys in the Google Classroom. Go through that and plan your answers accordingly. Read through the text accordingly. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me in the group. You can send me a WhatsApp message. But be sure that you do go through the textbook now. Thank you very much.